down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And I had a couple of things that I was doing right prior to coming online. And the first thing is I figured out a way to make it to where my stream would automatically start at exactly 5 minutes till. And so hopefully if that holds true, it did for tonight, but hopefully if that holds true for Wednesday, I now have a way to make it auto start. So that way I'm not sitting around looking at the clock and getting lost and going, oh crap, I've got to get it started. So that's going to be the new pattern for me, is to start the stream specifically. Now, there are a couple of things that if I screw up and don't have active, it will stop the stream from going. But that being said, hey, I'm trying to get things, a little bit, little more automatic, copacetic, whatever kind of edic you want to call it. Hey, couple of things. First of all, I sent out an announcement on Facebook. I had a bunch of people over on Facebook become top, I believe it's top followers. But anyway, they get these little icons next to their name. So the top follower one is a diamond. And so they get a chance to do the diamond next to their names whenever they post, and so on and so forth. And so I sent out a congratulations to all of them. Thank you very much for being a part of the program and being a part of the page and hanging out. That is absolutely awesome. The other thing too, and I like these, I like this stuff. But the other thing too, I got this sent to me by Becky down in Australia, my international contingent, who is in the house tonight, by the way. But she went ahead and sent me this on Twitter, in fact, and it says, "That's what I do. I listen to music, I drink whiskey, and I know things." Now, I've seen variations of this shirt before, but anyway, it was kind of cool as far as that goes. I've seen variations on it, but this particular one in particular is the fact that I like, that's what I do. I listen to music, which of course ties to TGRN, True Grit Roots Network. And then of course I drink whiskey. That's obvious. And I know things, or at least I act like I do. Anyway. All right. So tonight I am drinking, down my Four Roses small batch. I've got maybe a glass left, tonight's glass, and then one more, before I have to retire the bottle and go get a new one. But that is what I am drinking in my glass. And of course that comes with the stones, the whiskey stones in the cool glass. And, yeah. I like this stuff. I really do. Bonnie Patrick over on Rumble, she recommended it. Okay. So let's go ahead and get going on this. I got to figure out where the heck I am. Here we go. All right. So tonight's sponsor, affiliate, is the IOTC, the Institute on the Constitution. Was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government, as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, IOTC.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is IOTC.whiskeymusings.online to get great content and to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's IOTC.whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, check that out. That is 1/8 of an inch of leather there. It has weather or water-resistant pages, and check out this stitching. It goes all the way through as the binder. These things have a 100-year warranty from the manufacturer. If there is any issues with this in terms of materials or workmanship, they will either fix it or replace it for you for free. This is buddy tested, buddy approved, and my 12-year-old youngest fan also has used it apparently to get his Boy Scout badges. And so that is awesome. But if you want to just buy this and support the show, then go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online and you'll be directed right to where you can purchase this and support the show. So this is really cool. Hey, by the way, this thing is so well made. You can actually pass this down generation to generation. You can send this on as a keepsake item. It is fantastic, I'm telling you. All right. Do me a favor, go and check out the Institute on the Constitution. Go check them out today. That is awesome. They do an absolutely wonderful job. They've got a bunch of stuff out there as well for free, blog posts, things like that you can go and take up everything. And I have been, I'll come back to that. So let's go ahead and move on to, of course, the next segment in our broadcast, which is On This Day in American History. And of course, On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac. It is written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb, a fantastic, thick book with all kinds of little factoids, daily facts, and daily information with regards to our founding and our wonderful country that we have. And you can pick up the book anywhere books are sold. It is absolutely awesome for that. And you can either follow along with me or read it for yourself. I mean, there's several days that I miss because I only do it on Saturdays. So you can check out all of the days that I've missed. There's also a slew of other information about flags, about the presidents, about all kinds of stuff in here. So anyway, tonight we are going to be talking a little bit about some of our famous U.S. interplanetary probes. On March 11th, 1960, NASA launched Pioneer 5, one of its first efforts to explore interplanetary space. The spacecraft orbited the sun between Earth and Venus and provided the first map of the magnetic fields beneath the planets. Or between the planets. Wow. Oh my gosh. Have another drink, Rick. Woo! Since that time, NASA has sent dozens of unmanned probes into deep space, giving humans our first glimpses of the solar system's far reaches. Famous interplanetary probes include 1962, the mission was the Mariner 2 rocket, and it was the first spacecraft to successfully fly by and gather data on another planet, which was Venus. 1964 was Mariner 4, and that was the first to transmit close-up photos of another planet, which was Mars. 1972 was Pioneer 10, the first to investigate Jupiter and exit the planetary system. Then we have in 1975 Viking 1 and 2, which was the first to land safely on another planet, and that was Mars. 1977, we have Voyager 1, which studied Jupiter and Saturn. Voyager 1 is now the most distant man-made object in the universe from us. 1977 also saw the launch of Voyager 2, which studied Jupiter and Saturn and is the first spacecraft to visit Uranus and Neptune. 1989 saw the launch of Galileo, studied Jupiter's atmosphere and its moons. 1996 was the Mars Pathfinder, and they landed a rover on Mars in 1997 to explore its surface. In 1997, Cassini was the first spacecraft to actually orbit Saturn. 2003 was the Mars Exploration Rover, landed 2 rovers on Mars in 2004. 2005 was Deep Impact, which was the first probe to explore a comet's interior. And 2006 was New Horizons, which is on its way to study Pluto and its moons. Now, speaking of Pluto in particular, I grew up where Pluto was considered a planet, and apparently now it's not considered a planet anymore. In fact, they think it's it's actually a moon from another planet that we have yet to see. So anyway. Oh goodness. I see a lot of the normal miscreants and malcontents that are running around in here. I do have one point to make. Music Man. Let me see if I can find it again. So next week for the Mark K show, they're on vacation, and the entire crew is on spring break. And so Music Man posted in Rumble over here, no Mark next week. Whiskey, can you pick up so I can stay informed? You know, honestly, I really, really, I really wish that I could. Unfortunately, I do have other jobs. I do have my regular paying job. As much as I would love for this to be my job, and I'm trying, I am trying to get there. It unfortunately is not my primary revenue generating event in my life, and so therefore I do have to go to another, I owe, so off to work I go, kind of scenario. I wish I could, but anyway, I'll do whatever. And Daybreak, seriously, I mispronounced Uranus. Okay. It's not Uranus, like as in your butthole. Okay. It is actually pronounced Uranus, is my understanding. But anyway. All right. Okay, so enough about that, and enough about all of this stuff that I got going on here. We've done our first part of our program, and I know I don't normally do this. I know I don't normally. I don't like to listen to our current basement dummy in chief, honestly. But I did want to bring this up because he actually went through and said something that I think a lot of people had a lot of interest in. I mean, he does his gaffes, he does his comments, he does his off the cuff crap, which most of the time is just creepy and the whispering, pay your fair share, which is a bunch of shit. Anyway, sorry, I digress. But I did want to play this because I think it's really fun to discuss on the program here. So let me go ahead and bring this up, and let's take a listen to what Biden's gaffe is, wait, what the heck? Oh, I know, because that's the wrong one. Let's bring up Biden's gaffe. So here it is.
Guess what? You may remember I was running for office at the time, but you all may remember it, that I had a big fight with the former president and maybe future president. Bless me, Father. Anyway, no.
So he literally stated that the president, that the Trump, who was the former president, will very much be the next president, maybe. So honestly, I got to tell you, this is probably the most truthful that he has ever been in his entire career. The man literally has built his entire career out of being a plagiarist and a liar. Just about every day well, I know it's not him. I know it's some intern somewhere, but they post BS, all kinds of crap on the Twitters and, through tweets and stuff like that. Anybody that thinks that Trump was doing the exact same thing is just freaking nuts. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that, this guy, he rarely comes up with reality. Things like where Kamala Harris was the president. He's done gaffes like that. In fact, his Karine Jean-Pierre came up with the gaffe that Obama was actually a president as well. So that anyway, that's just really, really cool. So yes, I had to play it. I'm sorry. And most of the time I don't even want to listen to him. I unfortunately went through the entire State of the Union speech for you guys just so I could talk about it. But anyway, this guy is just horrible. I get chills. I really get chills when I listen to Kamala Harris, because I swear she has the mentality of a 5-year-old, and she can only speak to people as though they were 5 and 6-year-olds. So anyway, it's just, it's just horrible. But anyway, I digress. So as we all know, the January 6th footage, we're going to jump a little bit here. The January 6th footage, is, come out, and there's a lot of controversy about it. I can tell you that there are several people on the Twitterverse, which I've been hanging out and poking the bear, I guess, or poking the Dems, poking the liberal idiots that are over there. I can't believe how stupid they are. I really can't. They're just like totally. It's almost like, I'm sorry, I was talking to my wife about this, Mrs. Whiskey, the other day, and it was almost like all of a sudden, I don't know, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe somebody just flipped a switch and like half the planet went stupid. I just don't understand it. It's like, even some people that I saw was just, it's people that I thought were smart and respected and everything else. And they just like all of a sudden went stupid. And I don't understand why. Why that was the case, but here we are, we're talking about, January 6th. And of course, all of these droogs and idiots that went and did whatever they did. I mean, let's be honest. It wasn't perfect. It shouldn't have descended into a riotous type, but at the same time, if we're going to compare it, okay, if we're going to compare it to the entire summer previous, there was only one person that died, and that was Ashley Babbitt, on that day, and several people died, including David Dorn, during the other riots that were going on. We also have people who, billions of dollars worth in damage that the Democrat people did. So anyway, the point is, though, that Tucker Carlson's January 6th footage has opened up a door a very interesting door for some of the people that are out there. And so the thing about it is that, and I've just been yelled at here, Rosalind Borland, apparently, I don't recall all the names. I know David Dorn was a big one because he was, trying to protect a pawn shop. He was a retired police officer who got killed. And there's like so many. I mean, I can't even imagine the pain that these people's families felt with this whole thing. And the same thing with Ashley Babbitt. I mean, going and losing somebody to essentially a bad situation was just horrible. But the fact of the matter is that Tucker Carlson got a hold of was given access to the 44,000 hours of tapes. He has put out a bunch of pieces of footage, and the liberal leftists are just going absolutely nuts over the fact that it was out there. And so now the question has to be asked, in terms of these kinds of situations, what about all the people that have been currently convicted of essentially obstructing a proceeding, possibly doing trespassing? Because none of them have ever been, by the way, none of them have been accused of nor tried for sedition or treason. The most serious offense has been trespassing so far. But the thing about it is that a lot of people don't understand is if the lawyers for those people did not obtain this information, this causes some problems for the prosecution. And the reason being is because we have this concept in this country that essentially in a legal proceeding, okay, the defense is allowed to have surprises, but the prosecution cannot. So anytime that the prosecution gets something, it's the defense is automatically allowed, or should be automatically allowed, to see it and know about it. And so the release of these tapes calls into some serious question as to whether or not the prosecution for these cases, in particular, things like there's one member right now of 5 of the Proud Boys members that's on trial for seditious conspiracy. And basically, according to his defense lawyer, he was not seen, or he was not given any of these tapes. These tapes were not available to him. And so he's put in, the defense has put in a filing that basically is requesting for a mistrial from the attorneys representing the 5 Proud Boys who have been repeatedly accused by the government of wrongdoing. All of their previous requests have been denied. But in this particular case, it may possibly come true because of the fact that now we have more video footage of what happened on that day, especially inside the Capitol. We all know the outside, we saw all the cameras and everything on the outside. And again, the people that did bad need to be prosecuted. But at the same time, you can't just round everybody up and try to fit a crime to the person. You have to be accused of a crime and then solve the crime to find the perpetrator. That's the way our legal system is supposed to work. And so one of the nation's leading defense attorneys in this article telling the Washington Examiner that Carlson's footage appearing to show that the U.S. Capitol Police were escorting the infamous QAnon shaman could be a foreshadowing of an appeal to vacate his guilty plea, which through bargaining was chiseled down to a single count of obstruction of an official proceeding, which landed him in 41 months in prison, almost 4 years for just obstructing an official proceeding. Now, let's be honest. I think that's a little long for that offense. But that being the case, I think he has a strong case to get his guilty plea overturned and vacated. Silvergate, Harvey Silvergate says virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape. Oh, sorry, this is Carlson. This is Tucker Carlson talking about. Virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape, Carlson said Monday. The tapes show the Capitol Police never stopped him. They helped him. They acted as his tour guides. Now, Silvergate is a criminal defense and civil liberties attorney representing one-time Trump attorney John Eastman said, I think he can get his guilty plea vacated, referring to Chansley, who has yet to file an appeal or request a retrial, unfortunately, but I think he can. And I honestly, I believe he can. Silvergate said he should try and that he will probably succeed in that case. It was not the defense's fault that the footage wasn't turned over. On Thursday, Roger Roots, who is an attorney for the New York-based Proud Boy Dominic Pezzola, or Pezzola, Pezzola, I'm not going to pronounce it correctly. But anyway, wrote the footage from Carlson on Chansley is evidence that protesters went into the Senate chamber through the invitation of Capitol Police officers. Roots claimed the prosecutors withheld the footage from his client. Now, in this particular case, I'm just going to tell you, there is a piece of footage that I caught on Twitter coming in. Now, there's this account. Well, there's actually, I don't know, about 20 or 30 accounts that are being allegedly being called Democrat shill paid accounts. And there's a meme out there with a bunch of them on there. And one of them happens to be this account called @JoJo from Jers. And this person, she's got a photo of a blonde woman in her, icon or whatever. And she goes around and she's talking about how bad, the Republicans are and how bad, like Tucker Carlson lied about January 6th and the turnover and blah, 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 all of this other crap. Well, the thing about it was she posted, and I saw this right before I came on the air, is she posted about the fact that the first Ashley Babbitt wasn't a martyr. The fact that the QAnon shaman was not escorted around. And in specifics, she said that the Capitol Police were not waving people in. And of course, whenever you do that, or whenever you make those statements and they're wrong, the Twitter sphere, because everything's on camera now, folks. I mean, you can't, I just don't understand how you could even come close to getting away with something anymore. But the response was there were a couple of videos that popped up of literally Capitol Police on the outside taking down the barriers or opening up the barriers and then waving people in to the Capitol building. And I personally also have seen photos of Capitol Police opening up the doors when they were shut. Okay. They were shut, closed, and locked. And Capitol Police went ahead and opened up the doors and allowed the people to come in. And if you look at the video, you can see people are just kind of milling around. They're staying within the ropes for the most part. Okay. Now, these people, I can't understand. Okay. Again, you need to understand there are some people who definitely deserve to get arrested and tried and convicted for whatever damage they did. If they broke out a window or whatever, I mean, anyway. But the majority of the people on those tapes are not that way. They were walking around. They were enjoying themselves. They were seeing, the people's house. And yes, it wasn't a tour. Okay. It wasn't a tour guide. But the fact of the matter is that these people, not everybody was in the Droogs and Idiot crew. that caused all kinds of damage and that kind of stuff. And this, fortunately, we now are starting to see this stuff. But apparently, and let me get back to the piece here. On Thursday, Roger Roots, the attorney for the Proud Boy, Dominic Pezzola, wrote about the footage, as I mentioned, and Roots claimed that the prosecutors withheld the footage from his client. He, in a court filing, quote, "This footage is plainly exculpatory as it establishes that the Senate chamber was never violently breached and, in fact, was treated respectfully by the January 6th protesters." He wrote in an 11-page court filing. To the extent that protesters entered the chamber, they did so under the supervision of Capitol Police. The senators on January 6th could have continued proceedings. And that actually is true, because the entire thing that was going on basically was put down within hours. Once it got dark, everybody left. I mean, seriously, we have, that's facts. So anyone who sits here and is talking about January 6th and saying it was an insurrection and so on and so forth is seriously, yeah, they're just seriously dumbasses. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. They're dumbasses. And they need to go back to school to learn what the hell critical thinking is all about. For that. All right. Now, another big, huge thing, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this one, but another big, huge thing that came out was Biden's administration put out his proposed budget. Now, for all of you that don't know, right now, what's happening is we have hit our debt ceiling limit, and the Federal Reserve has taken what they call extraordinary measures to keep us from defaulting on our loans. However, down the road here in just a few more months, we are going to literally be in a position where those, extreme measures or extenuating circumstances are going to essentially run out. And we're going to be in a position where we, as far as the U.S. is concerned, where we may default on our loans for the first time in history. So I'm going to point this out to you. First of all, I don't think we will ever default on our loans. So let's just throw that out there right now. If we do, honestly, I don't necessarily think it would necessarily be a bad thing, because the way that this government has been, spending money, and they don't have the resources in terms of our taxes at this time to bring it back in. But before I go through and start talking a little bit about his budget, I want to bring in a couple of specific terminology, and I want you to understand a little bit about how this is going to work before I start describing some of this. So, first things first, everybody knows that we work on a budget that has a deficit, and that we have debt. Now, those two terms in particular are often used by the mainstream media and by the president himself in order to try and shore up his position on all of these, on the budget and everything else, and how the economy is going. And so I wanted to get some serious definitions going with this, because this is really important when you're trying to dissect the articles that are coming out and the things that the president says about his economy and about his budget that are key indicators that he potentially is lying. Okay. So, the first thing is the deficit. Okay. So for any given year, and this is coming from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Okay. It took me 2 seconds to look this up on the internet. But the deficit, or a surplus, because we can actually have a surplus at the same time, for any given year, The federal budget deficit is the amount of money the federal government is spending, also known as outlays, minus the amount of money that it collects from taxes, also known as revenue. Okay? If the government collects more revenue than it spends, then obviously it's a surplus rather than a deficit. All right? Now, as of right now, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, estimates that fiscal year 2022 budget deficit will be around $1 trillion, which is 3.9% of the economy as measured by the gross domestic product, which is GDP. Okay. Now, when the economy is weak, people's incomes decline, and so the government collects less in tax revenue. All right. Now, let's go on to debt. So debt, which is a totally separate thing, debt is unlike the deficit, which drives the amount of money that the government is borrowing in any given single year. But the debt by itself is the cumulative amount of money the government has borrowed throughout our nation's history. Okay. So debt is what we have already borrowed and are potentially paying back. I mean, that would be the idea. And so realistically, the debt itself, when the government runs a deficit, the debt goes up. When the government runs a surplus, the debt shrinks. Okay, that's how deficit affects the debt. All right, but they're not one and the same. And this is where Joe Biden tends to have this thing about how he is he's cutting the deficit in half and so on and so forth, which he does. He talks about in this particular budget where he's talking about. Okay. So the Biden budget supposedly cuts 2.9 trillion in deficit cuts. Now, keep in mind our deficit right now is running in the 31 trillion dollars, might be up to 33 depending on what it is, but it's 30 trillion. And so Biden is suggesting that he's going to cut out 10% of that. He's going to cut out 10% of that deficit. And how he's going to do that is he's going to hike taxes. Okay. Remember what I said. The deficit is what we are spending in comparison to revenues. So, and debt gets paid down when we have a budget surplus. So even if we're running a deficit, regardless of what we actually bring in, if we cut the deficit, as long as we still have a deficit, okay, that means that our debt is still going to be increasing no matter what. All right. But apparently the GOP is going to reject this, which, again, this article was a couple days old. So, or no, actually this is today. But the GOP is definitely going to reject it. And there's several reasons why they're doing it. But the thing about it is that Biden is claiming that his budget is proposing a deficit reduction. Okay. But as a part of that, he is proposing trillions in tax hikes to try and offset things. And so this is the funny thing is that he's also partly repealing some of the Trump tax cuts. Now, for anyone who is a student of history, something like myself, okay, if you recall, there has been a period of time, and I'm trying to think of that time. I mean, I don't know. It's somewhere around Jimmy Carter. And he had like huge amounts of taxes. God, it was like the 1970s. Okay. And I'll be honest with you, I was still in diapers through most of the 1970s, I think. But the funny thing about it is that in the 1980s, a gentleman by the name of Ronald Reagan came into office, and Ronald Reagan essentially said, look, we're going to cut the taxes. We're going to cut our spending. outside of the stuff that we would normally spend on, like military spending. Now, there's no doubt in anybody's mind who goes and studies history, our military spending during the time of Reagan increased like crazy. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that just like with the Trump tax cuts, all right, we had, when you cut taxes, when you cut the overall percent that people pay, you actually bring in more in overall revenue. Because as that article, the previous article that I just showed you stated, when more money comes in, the more revenue comes in, then we can apply it not only to our debt, but we also have a smaller deficit for that year. And if we can cut back our spending in any given year and cut and increase our revenue in any given year, then what we can do is we can create a surplus, which will allow us to pay down our debt even faster. Okay. This is all simple Econ 101, realistically. I mean, anybody who has gone through an economy class understands this. The biggest challenge that we have, even anybody that has a household and balances a budget can understand this simple thing. The problem that we have is the fact that the federal government essentially spends money that it hasn't even realized yet, which is part of the reason why we have a deficit. We do what's called deficit spending. We spend money. We predict that we're going to spend X amount of money in any given year, and we do that, and we carry that over and over again every single year, assuming that eventually our revenues are going to catch up and we're going to end up paying off all of our debt sooner or later. Doesn't happen. Hasn't happened in a while. In fact, I can't even think of one presidential candidate, save Ross Perot, who actually understood how the government spent its money and had a plan, honestly, to go and take it and get rid of it. Okay. All right. So anyway, the point here is that Biden's budget is proposing trillions in tax hikes, which, of course, whenever we get tax hikes, people tend to want, especially those that Biden is looking to tax, they are going to go and take their money elsewhere. They're going to put it in tax sheltered accounts. They're going to take it offshore. They're not the rich, and the corporations have the ability to go ahead and do that, not the average taxpayer, because the average taxpayer, honestly, doesn't have the spare cash running around to go and be able to invest in any of these offshore accounts and things like that. But President Biden is suggesting, and as a part of his budget, to increase the corporate tax rate from 21% up to 28%. And this, of course, falls along the lines of his thing of ensuring that large corporations pay their fair share. Okay. Now, I'm just going to point something out to you. Has anyone known of a corporation that had its own money? Has anyone known of a corporation that actually had its own money? Where do you think those corporations get their money from? Here, I know it's a rhetorical question. I'm just going to go ahead and toss it out to you. It's pretty simple. They raise the prices on products to consumers. Okay. Any tax hike that is going to come in to a corporation, as far as the corporation is concerned, they immediately take that money and they put it into what they call the cost of goods and services. Okay. It's called COGS. They add it to their COGS. Their costs now go up, which means that their prices will in turn increase as well. Generally speaking, it's usually about the same distance, because they have to, corporations have these things called shareholders that they're beholden to. And so what they do is they try to keep their profit margins running right about the same. if they can, maybe a little bit higher than that. But the point is that all of this stuff, all this is going to do is just increase the cost, the price to the consumer for the goods and services. Corporations do not have their own revenue streams. They create a product, they price how much it costs to make that product. They put a price on that product to increase their profit margin, okay, their gross profit margin, and then they go and send it out to be sold, and whatever money comes back is what they earn in profit. Now, most of the time they take that profit and they will likely either reinvest it or they distribute it among the shareholders, because again, as a corporation or a owner, you take the risk, and you also reap the reward. Okay. Now, all of that being the case, all right, Biden clearly does not understand this, because as far as he's concerned, he wants to tax the corporations even more. Okay. And so in his mindset, he basically says that, the billionaires and the millionaires and the corporations should basically be paying more in taxes. Okay. Now the funny thing is that whenever corporations get a tax break, they usually tend to take that additional money and they reinvest in their businesses. They expand, they add more jobs, which brings more people in, earning more money at the corporation to extend the economy. And I can tell you, this is the case across the board. If you ever watch, like even right now, if you ever watch anybody who is a market analysis in the stock market, or not in the stock market, but any kind of market analysis, you'll see companies right now are starting to cut back on stuff because they are expecting to get these larger tax bills. And so they have to take that cash and they have to hold it rather than spending it on something to expand their business or to do something good for their business and their people, their employees. Okay. So anyway, the whole point and parcel on all of this is that the White House, once again, is going after what he thinks is the largest tax providers. And he doesn't understand the basic concept here that the more money that you allow these people to actually use to reinvest in their business to create more money, okay, is that creates prosperity for everyone else. It's not trickle down, okay? The concept of trickle down is not an economic theory. In fact, Thomas Sowell did a very famous interview where he debunked the idea of trickle down. However, that being said, the capitalist system does tend to work in such a way that when corporations and organizations are doing so much better than the regular people, that they end up coming out with a good product. Hang on just a second. Okay. Well, so that being said, moving on here, the Biden budget also proposes to close a crypto loophole to raise $24 billion in new revenue. Now, this crypto loophole is dealing with the whole idea of people going out and buying cryptocurrency, using it as a loss, which again, when you're dealing with taxes, you have your taxes that you have coming in, and then of course your losses, and the difference between the two is essentially whether or not you owe taxes or get a refund or whatever you've already paid in and that kind of thing. So in this particular case, a lot of rich people, such as Elon Musk, have invested in crypto coin, like Bitcoin and some of those other ones. And so essentially what Biden is proposing is that it's closing the crypto loophole. In other words, the loophole being used to use crypto, losing in crypto as a loss. The other thing he's also proposing as a part of his plan is to essentially tax what is called unrealized gains on a project or a product or a stock or something along those lines. Meaning that if you have bought stock in a company and the stock price goes up, but you haven't sold that stock yet, that difference from when you purchased it to where it is today is called the unrealized gains. And unfortunately, as far as like the unrealized gains are concerned, that is because you haven't pulled that money out. And since you haven't pulled that money out yet, you haven't realized the advantage on it. Well, Biden wants to tax that. And that's a part of what he's going through and talking about. All right. So the House Freedom Caucus has, and the Republicans, the GOP as a general rule has not presented another, an alternative to the budget. Okay. But the House Freedom Caucus has, and the House Freedom Caucus demands that spending cuts as a condition. They're demanding actually spending cuts as a condition for raising the debt ceiling. In other words, allowing us as the U.S. to essentially take out more loans. Okay. But they're basically saying, look, you have to cut back on your spending in order to allow for us to be able to raise the debt ceiling for you. Okay. Now, the caucus plan here is essentially saying that they want Biden to end the plan for student loan forgiveness. Now, that's going to happen. I mean, he's going to end this, and that's going to happen just in the courts. I'm telling you, it was unrealistic anyway for him to do that. But anyway, so they also want to cap discretionary spending at the 2022 levels for 10 years. And that essentially would remove roughly $131 billion from the federal budget next year, according to the caucus, and save close to $3 trillion over a decade. That's what he's looking for. Doing so will allow Congress to act on the higher priorities that the nation faces. Okay. Now, the cap on discretionary spending. Now, this is a key point in the article, because one of the things that Biden has been saying is that GOP, that the Republicans want to get rid of Social Security, retirement, and Medicare benefits. According to the caucus, they are saying that the cap in discretionary spending would also protect Social Security, retirement, and Medicare benefits for this. And their overall plan aims to stimulate the economy by reducing regulation, increasing energy production, and restoring work requirements on welfare programs, which I think all of those are a good idea, a very good idea. Okay. So now we have an alternative plan for the budget, and we'll have to see what Biden is going to do with it. But I do want to say I have a link in the show notes. I brought up the table of contents, and this might actually be a little bit of a homework for you. To be honest, I would love to see somebody go through, and I've already kind of been through it, but I would love to see somebody go through the Constitution of the United States under Article 1 and starting at Section 8. And go through the departments that he lists as a part of this budget. And this budget, all these departments, such as the Department of Education, which I've said multiple times on this program, is not a proper department. It's not constitutionally mandated. But go through some of these departments and see how many of these departments they could actually cut off as a part of the spending, because it is not constitutional. There's several in here that I can see right off the top that are probably not a constitutionally backed or even a congressional statute that follows it, other than things like the Department of Defense, as an example, the Department of Commerce, which is one of the things that the federal government is supposed to do, is help regulate commerce between the states. And those types of things. There are a few in here that are that way, but there are also a lot of other departments that are part of this budget proposal that honestly I don't think are constitutionally backed and realistically should be cut off based off of the 10th Amendment. All right. So that was a lot of words, and I hope I covered that well enough, but you get an idea based off of that when it comes to the entire economy and how bad it actually is. All right. So you remember that, we're going to jump here. Do you remember that disinformation board? Do you remember the whole disinformation governance board? Well, guess what? Feds haven't given up on that. And let me explain why. We thought once Scary Poppins was basically had the water thrown on her and she melted away into obscurity, we thought this thing was gone. Well, you know what? It isn't. This article in Red State, which I have in the show notes, feds quietly open a successor to the Disinformation Governance Board, but it doesn't have Scary Poppins at the helm. So apparently the federal government has formed what's called the FMIC, the Foreign Malign Influence Center. Okay. And essentially it was quietly put together, but is being headed up by somebody else in this. And let me see if I can find who it is. Okay, so it was formed in September of 2022. And it is, for a lack of a better analogy, a clone of the dead and buried Disinformation Governance Board. The FMIC's mission is the very same mission that Jankowicz would have headed, but apparently without her Disney musical remakes. So I don't know if you guys remember, but she did a TikTok video of supercalifragilistic and turned it into something with lying. But anyway, its mission statement is to counter malign influence that ostensibly would influence behaviors and opinions and elections. So realistically, what they should do is they should go after the FBI because of the Hunter Biden thing. Okay, so this essentially was activated on September 23rd. It was chartered by Congress and established by the Department of National Intelligence, the DNI. And it serves as a primary U.S. government organization for analyzing and integrating all intelligence and other reporting possessed or acquired pertaining to foreign malign influence, including election security. So ideally, I mean, what they're talking about here is they're focused on foreign nationals or foreign interference in our election. Although you know as well as I do that it's going to be, you know, you gotta question what's going on here. The guy that's in charge of it right now is Jeffrey Wichman, Wichman, and he is a 30-year veteran of the CIA. Yeah, we can really trust those guys. But anyway, so at this point, I mean, again, the feds did the Disinformation Governance Board, and now they've sort of recreated it and kind of did it in a quiet state. And I just wanted to check and see. There was a link inside of the Red State article. Here's the actual website. So you can go and take a look at the organization and take a look at the Foreign Malign Influence Center, activated on September 23rd, 2022, so on and so forth. You can see the entire thing right here at dni.gov. Okay. Well, this disinformation thing apparently is being pushed now or being investigated now also by the GOP. And Disinformation Inc., 12 Republicans pressed the State Department over grants that it gave to the Global Disinformation Index. You remember that stuff that I was telling you might not have been like in the Constitution. I'm betting that these grants were not in the Constitution either. But anyway, in this particular case, a dozen Republican members of Congress are demanding answers from the State Department over its bankrolling a disinformation tracking group. Now, this tracking group, if you recall, I did a part of this. I talked about an article in one of my other episodes. This is coming from a foreign entity. And the Washington Examiner actually revealed that it was blacklisting and trying to shut down conservative websites that were here in the United States. Republicans have continued to press, this is from the piece, Republicans have continued to press the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken over two State Department-backed entities, the Global Engagement Center and the National Endowment for Democracy, for granting, get this number, $665,000 between 2020 and 2021 to the Global Disinformation Index. Now, the Global Disinformation Index is I believe it's a UK company that is doing this. So, a quote here from a letter that was sent to Blinken states, these grants have real-world implications, chilling freedom of expression and speech with impunity, the Republicans wrote. For example, considering the Energy Department and the FBI's new determination that the coronavirus most likely arose from a Wuhan lab leak, this taxpayer-funded British outfit pressured advertising companies to punish websites that dared to report on the entirely legitimate lab leak theory. Okay. And like I said, GDI is a British organization. It has two linked U.S. nonprofit groups. And they compile a dynamic exclusion list with at least 2,000 sites that they deem to be the most foremost disinformation peddlers. So I got to throw this out here. Okay. Disinformation peddling, the entire thought process. Again, who's going to watch the watchers and who's going to watch the watchers of the watchers of the watchers? And how do all of these people know what's disinformation and what's real? As we've all seen throughout COVID, we had a bunch of government organizations and entities talking about the COVID lab leak being a lie. And yet now it's more than likely where that came from. We had those same government entities all talking about how masking was going to prevent the coronavirus from the transmissibility of the coronavirus. We all know that was a lie. They had the same concept where they were talking about the COVID vaccine, how it was going to prevent you from getting it. That was also a lie. And so how do we know that these people are actually providing us with real information? Even if it's real at the time, it could be proven disinformation or misinformation later. So I'm not sitting well with the idea that the state government or that our government is passing over grants to a information entity, a foreign entity to boot, who is recommending that free speech of Americans be censored. This is just a bit of a problem to me. Speaking of misinformation and disinformation, Christopher Wray was apparently up in front of a committee here recently. When has he not been up in front of a committee recently? But anyway, he apparently will not dismiss the claim that the Hunter Biden laptop release was part of a disinformation campaign. He literally will not let that go, even though we know that it wasn't part of a disinformation campaign. In fact, it's been proven to be his. Hunter Biden admitted it was his and has in fact opened up a lawsuit that essentially he admits that it's his. So yeah, this is just crazy. This guy, Christopher Wray, he is just a sad sack. I'll be honest with you. But anyway, he refused to say on Thursday whether the release of the information from Hunter Biden's laptop was part of a disinformation campaign. There's absolutely zero evidence that has shown up that has supported that claim, by the way. And it was initially advanced by Democrats and former intelligence officials. Some of those intelligence officials have come out and said, yeah, well, we know it was real. We just signed on the letter anyway. And there actually is even a FBI case where a couple of FBI people have been fired, and one in particular is under a trial right now for information that was put together by the whole Steele dossier and the FISA warrants and so on and so forth. I mean, this is just ridiculous. We've got the most corrupt government I think I've ever seen, especially in my lifetime, going on right now. And speaking of corrupt governments and disinformation and everything else, apparently most of the major news outlets have steered away from the House subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government, which is hearing conversations about the Twitter files. So the mainstream media is just ignoring the fact that we have probably one of the greatest conspiracies, and it's not a conspiracy theory, but one of the greatest conspiracies and attacks on our individual freedoms happening right in front of us. And they basically are ignoring it. The major broadcast networks of ABC, CBS, and NBC were not interested and ignored the entire bombshell Twitter file story with the conversations between Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi and the congressional committee. So they've just ignored it. I mean, just like they ignored the Hunter Biden laptop. Anyway, apparently they covered 44 minutes and 7 seconds previewing the Oscars, which is where a bunch of overprivileged and basically useless people who are just for entertainment anyway. They reach around and they pat themselves on the back. And I'm not even going to watch. I won't even watch the Oscars. I just won't. I'm not going to do it. All right. So that pretty much concludes most of my major stories that I wanted to cover. But tonight's, I'm going to kind of shift a little bit here. Tonight's question for whiskey is actually not so much of a question, but more of a kind of an observation. So let me go ahead. I've got to get that in here. I really do. So let me go ahead and get this up. And where is there it is. All right. So let's go ahead and go with question for whiskey. Buddy from Rumble writes, whiskey. I guess this is more of a request hiding behind a question. I was watching an argument about the Pledge of Allegiance recently, and it reminded me of a comedian named Red Skelton from many years ago. Mr. Skelton rarely included politics in his comedy. However, at the end of one of his shows one day, Red decided to recite the Pledge of Allegiance and the meaning to the actual words. Would you play Red and the Pledge on your show and give us your thoughts about it? Okay, so first of all, that is one of my all-time favorite clips. Red Skelton was a comedian back in the days where comedians actually made people laugh without resorting to things like vulgar language, vulgar situations and incidences and things like that. So that particular scenario, I like a lot of the older comics and things like that. I really kind of got turned off by like Eddie Murphy's Raw and Andrew Dice Clay and some of those people who a lot of people in my generation, they thought were great. I don't really find them entertaining in my mind. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring up Red Skelton's Pledge of Allegiance. Let me get rid of this. Red Skelton's Pledge of Allegiance, because I think it is just masterful the way that he explains the entire thing. And in fact, Charlie Daniels did a tribute to Red Skelton where he mimicked the words. So here we go, and I'm going to disappear during it. So here we go. I got to find it. There it is.
I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer and I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. And he says, he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester, and it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word? I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts, freedom is everybody's job. United. That means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose. All divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose. And that's love for country. And to the Republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people. And it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
Yeah, that is, in my mind, that's one of the greats, the late great Red Skelton. I can remember watching him as a kid at times, and yeah, it's an amazing thing. I'll tell you what, I'm being asked in the chat here. I'm being asked to post the link. I actually grabbed that video for a long time ago, from I think it's episode 59. I have the link in where I got it from, in the show notes of episode 59, which is my 2021 Independence Day celebration, where I played that. And I have to be careful sometimes playing it because, of course, copyright infringement and things like that. But if you want to find the link, you can go to episode 59 on either Rumble or YouTube. I don't think it's been blocked by YouTube, but you can go down to episode 59, the 2021 Independence Day special. And I should have the link in the description there. So, but anyway. I can't follow Red Skelton. I really can't. I believe it was in I think it was 1954 when they added, could have been 53, but when they added the words under God, and they turned that into, they turned that into essentially a prayer by adding those two. So yeah, that is just, it's really sad that we would even consider that being a prayer for it. But anyway, hard for me to follow that. So I am just going to, end it there. Do me a favor. That'll be my final Whiskey Musings thought. Do me a favor. If you like the program, if you like what I do, please head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account and follow me over there. I am at 496 subscribers. I am looking for the big old 500, but I'm actually also looking for, the 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. Don't think I'm going to make it, but that's okay. I'll shoot for the stars. And hey, listen, if you have a question for Whiskey, you can go ahead and send it in to fans, FANS. That's Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra at whiskeymusings.online. That's fans at whiskeymusings.online. You can send me a question and I'll feature it on Saturdays. You can also send in pets for my Wednesday segment of Pet of the Week at that same address. Otherwise, I will see you Wednesday, and you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. I do appreciate you being here. And of course, take care of yourself. We'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.